I feel like I need to give a little update in terms of this baby. I think I'm getting a Braxton Hicks contraction. Yesterday I had a 39-week appointment with my OB. I'm currently 39 weeks and 3 days, I think. My due date is in 4 days. I had my 39-week appointment, and the OB, he went in to go check the, you know, the ruler thing of like my belly where they go like from here to here. And he was under impression that my belly was a little too big. And he checked my cervix and he said that she did drop, which he became a little bit more surprised to see the fact that because she's dropped, you know, that measurement should have decreased, and it hasn't. It increased, which is a good thing that the baby's growing. But anyway, so that number increased, and he became a little bit worried, and he was saying that he thinks that she's going to be a chunky baby, and that he's just not 100% sure on how much she's weighing, and you know, if that is something that I can actually push out. So he wanted to have me go for a growth scan, and today I went in for a growth scan to get checked, and the baby is 8.5 pounds, which is on the larger side, I think, but just from talking to people and everything, 8.5 is kind of a big one. And they measured the diameter of the belly, and it was in the 90th percentile in terms of how big it is. So I think she's really chunky, and I'm kind of waiting for a phone call from him to see. You know, obviously I'm technically due in 4 days, and I have another appointment. And I don't know, like, what the plan is. Obviously, my initial plan was, you know, go as natural as possible, you know, push her out, don't do epidural. But I'm not even sure if I can push her out, and I don't want her to have, like, that shoulder dystocia or something that's called, and have her be in pain. So I don't know. I don't know what to do, and I don't know what he's gonna say, and if he's gonna be like, yeah, I think you should go for a C-section. Like, I don't know if that's something I want to do, especially since it's my first. Like, it's gonna be harder, and you know, I'm not really necessarily having those strong contractions, like what people would usually say, you know, how contractions are, where they're like the tightness of the belly. It's like my belly feels so tight naturally. I get like more so period cramps, and I talked to the OB about it. I was like, is that like contractions, or am I just, you know, imagining things? And he says those also are counted as contractions, but I don't get those frequent or as often, or like they're not strong enough for me to be like, oh yeah, like painful, like my body is getting ready. More feels just like it's just there. He did check my cervix, and he said that I was dilating, but it's hardly by anything. A little update, just came back from the OB appointment. He did a cervical sweep on me, said I was only 1 centimeter dilated, so he couldn't do a full proper cervical sweep. Honestly, it feels like I'm just a chicken sitting on an egg and nothing's happening. No crazy Braxton Hicks contractions, literally nothing. The OB did let me know that he's not really worried about her weight. The fact that she's almost going to be 9 pounds at 41 weeks. He's more so worried about the fact that he thinks I'm more likely to have a C-section because her belly is really huge. So we're under a big assumption that that's what's going to happen. If I don't labor this week, I have an induction scheduled for Monday. So maybe that will speed something up. But literally, so far, Nothing. It's currently November 13th and I'm on my yoga ball and I've been having a lot more period cramps. I have no idea what this means, but they're getting a lot more frequent, more painful-ishy, and tomorrow is technically my official due date. Is it gonna happen today? Is it gonna happen tomorrow? I have no idea, but she officially weighs around 8.5 pounds.
All right, so it looks like I'm getting ready to go to church, but I'm not, because today is a very special day in the making. Because as we walk down the hall, and we enter through the baby room,
to the nursery,
we find Alina. What's happening?
in my state of tranquility.
Yeah, but what's happening right now?
I don't know. I think I'm having frequent contractions, and I lost my mucus plug, and I'm just so scared to get turned down at the hospital and be like, no, too bad, go home.
Okay, how frequent are contractions?
They're happening like every five-ish minutes.
Okay, and it's been like that for how long?
I don't know. It's been like that since when did I talk to Natasha?
And that's been over an hour ago, right?
Yeah, I talked to her at 9:43.
Okay. I think the 5-1-1 rule says when you have contractions 5 minutes apart, lasting 1 minute for an hour, you go to the hospital.
Yeah, I'm just scared that they're gonna turn me down.
I think we should go to the hospital.
Yeah.
Okay, let's give him a call?
Yeah.
Okay, let's dial. Okay, so Lynn, what's happening?
Yeah.
So the doctor lady came in. She got Alina hooked up to a whole bunch of instrumentation, to a whole bunch of machines. And then she checked, and we are still 2 centimeters dilated.
Not even.
So they're gonna keep us here. Yeah, not even. So they're gonna keep us here for a little bit, but they're gonna send us home. And then when more active contractions happen, we're gonna come back.
And I present to you guys baby girl Sophia. Alright, so there has to be a little update in terms of how this beautiful human being came to world. Excuse this. Didn't have time to do my hair, so this is what we're working with. I tried to record this yesterday, but the microphone didn't work. So I wanted to give a little backstory of like what happened, and I put together a few clips from what we have recorded to kind of document our story. As you probably read in the title, my birth was around 50 hours, which was not what we thought will happen or what we initially thought will be our birth, I guess. I was 10 days overdue. I had a planned induction on Wednesday, the 23rd. On Tuesday morning, I decided that I wanted to, well, on Monday night, I wanted Tuesday morning to be, and the day to be my last day of like pampering myself, just relaxing, really enjoying the time before the baby comes. Tuesday comes around, Vlad wakes up and heads to work, which he worked from home. I woke up with cramps around like 7 in the morning. I couldn't fall asleep. So 7 o'clock rolls around and I'm having a hard time falling asleep because I'm having these cramps that are just continual and they're not going away. So I called my sister-in-law around like 9 o'clock and I'm like, how do I know if I'm in labor? And she said, well, usually your cramps, you can just start timing them. And if they're consistent, then that's probably you're in labor or something like along the lines of that. Okay, so I started timing them and I was already at the 5-1-1 rule. So that's 5 minutes apart, lasting a minute for a whole hour. And at this point, they were lasting for 2-3 hours or whatever. I tell Vlad, I was like, I think I'm in labor. And I'm at the 5-1-1 rule. Well, I was told by my OB that at the 5-1-1, I should probably head to the hospital so I can get my antibiotics, just because I need to get them 4 hours before she arrives. We head over to the hospital, and I knew that one thing that I would hate for it to happen is if I get have to be sent home. So as we arrived there, it was like 11, 12 in the afternoon, 11 in the morning, I don't know. And they do a cervical check, and they, do the heart monitor for her. And sure enough, I was in labor, but I was really, really early. And I was only like 1.5 centimeters dilated. They tell me that I need to go home and basically just labor up until they get stronger. Which, by the way, ended up being that because we arrived there the first time, we also have to pay a bill for just getting a hefty bill for just arriving there in the triage and having to be sent home. So that's great. We head home, and I labor at home for another 12 hours. That's like on the couch, in the bed, most of it was in the bathtub, and I was using the comb. For some reason, those 12 hours seemed kind of fast, but kind of slow. I think when you're in pain, you don't really realize time. 12 hours goes by, and it's like 1 in the morning, and I tell Vlad we should probably start heading home because my contractions at this point were really, really, really strong. We arrived back at the hospital, which was like a 30-40 minute drive. I tell Vlad I would really hate for them to send us back home because I'm not far dilated. We arrived there, and they finally actually admit us in, which was like heavenly. And they checked my cervix, and I was still like at 1.5 centimeters or 3 centimeters dilated, or something along the lines of that. Just because I've been laboring all through the night, they asked me if I want to get some kind of medication where it relaxes my body. Administered a shot, and I pass out within a couple of minutes. It was heavenly. I was still having my contractions, but my body was relaxed. Around like 7, 8 in the morning, I do another cervical check, and I was 3 centimeters dilated, which is so sad after all those hours. 3 or 4, something along the lines of that. So I continue on laboring. The bathtub, the TENS machine, the positions, the everything, and Vlad was like helping me out within all of it. Labor, up until I think my water breaks, and I didn't know about it up until I was laying on the bed, and the nurse was like, "Oh, I think your water broke." But it only broke she was head down, so from the top portion of my belly, not from the bottom. So the OB comes in, and she double checks, and she's like, "Oh yeah, your water did break." And my contractions were stacked atop on each other, really strong. So she breaks the bottom portions of it. And when they broke it, they realized that Sophia girl has went to the bathroom, which I didn't know about this up until recently, but apparently if your baby has gone to the number 2 in the inside of you, it creates a risk of some sort. So I was told that she would probably have to be in the NICU after she's born. I was like, oh no, worried. The water breaks, and I'm still laboring. At one point, I get another cervical check, and I was 6 centimeters dilated, which is, I think, considers as active labor. And the OB was like, "Oh my gosh, yay, this is great, you're in active labor, just hold on." Within 30 minutes, I go from 6 to a 9, and then things just hit the fan, I guess. After so many hours of laboring, I don't remember how many hours, and dealing with each contraction one at a time, I was just telling myself, one contraction at a time. And then once I reached the 9 centimeters, I was like, I'm so close into pushing this baby out, just so close, I can do it. So I get my cervical check again, because my OB was like, "Oh, just like you're probably gonna get to a 10 in like 30 or 32 an hour." So she does a cervical check, and she tells me this devastating news. She's like, "It looks like your cervix is inflamed, and you're back at like at 7.5 centimeters." That was just like a knife through your chest. Like all the pain was for basically nothing. I think I was over 24 hours at that point, or 30 hours. Yeah, I think I was like 30 anyway, I don't know, 30 hours and of laboring. And I asked her, what should I do? And I really liked about this hospital is that they never forced me to on any of their decisions or choices. They were very open to what we wanted and how comfortable we felt. I look over to her and I'm like, what do you recommend? And she was like, I was like, do you recommend an epidural? And she nods her head and says yes. So I get the epidural, which I don't even know how. My contractions were every like 5 seconds or whatever. And I get that epidural. It actually didn't hurt. I remember my right leg went blue and numb instantly. And after in postpartum, that leg had like a tingling sensation for a couple of days afterwards. But anyway, so I get the epidural, and the anesthesiologist did an amazing job. I didn't have any back pains or anything after delivering her. And I didn't know this, but the thing that they insert in your spine is actually more of like a needle. I didn't actually see the syringe or anything, but he has me go on the bed, slouch over or something like that, and inserts it. He did do like a numbing thing, and I get the epidural, and all of a sudden it's like a whole new world. I'm able to talk to Vlad. I'm able to just enjoy being present and just finally catch a break for once. And I remember Vlad being like, oh, you're having a contraction right now. Can you feel it? And it was like an insane tense one, right? And I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't feel it. I don't feel anything from waist down. That was heavily, and I'm like, why didn't I do this earlier? Hour at least 10 into labor. So time does go by, and I'm also on Pitocin. So ever since we arrived the second time, I was on Pitocin. At one point, Vlad's looking at me and he's like, your contractions are slowing down and becoming less and less and less and less. Vlad tells me, he's like, you're getting him every 7 minutes. So they have decreased massively, and as in strength as well. And he's like, in the last 2 hours, you had 3 big ones, and that's it. But I obviously don't feel anything. So that OB that was with me this whole time, she had a 24-hour shift, and she's like, well, I'm off at 8 o'clock. I need to basically let me do another cervical check. So she does another cervical check. Oh my gosh, I'm confusing stuff now. I get the epidural, so she does a cervical check after many hours, and she's like, oh, you're back at a 9, so you only have a couple of hours and you'll be at 10 and you can start pushing. I'm off at 8, so another OB is gonna come and basically she'll check on you and she'll take care of you. I'm like, okay, great. Finally we're back at a 9. Things are becoming more brighter, and we're really turning the page here. Well, after the OB leaves, I meet the new OB, and she's like, okay, let me just do a cervical check and see where you're at. She does a cervical check, and she's like, you're still at a 9, whatever, you give it a couple of hours. So she gives it a couple hours, she comes back, she checks, and she's like, actually, your cervix is becoming inflamed again. That's when I was like, what in the world is happening? My contractions decreased, my cervix inflamed, and this baby, well, she was 100% effaced, but not working out. I look over at her and I was like, what do you recommend? And she's like, I think you need to have a conversation about having a C-section with your husband. So she leaves. I have a conversation with Vlad, and at this point we were at 48, 49, maybe 50 hours already. I was like, I think we need to have a C-section. We've been at it for days. I'm so tired, and it feels like we're not getting anywhere. I think C-section is the way to go. He's like, I'll support you in any choice you make, and even though this was the last thing we wanted to do, it had to be done. So OB comes back and we're like, I think we have to do C-section. She's like, I think that's a smart choice. And I told her, I'm like, I really hope that, me doing the C-section is not an easy way for you guys to I didn't want it to be something that, a doctor would wants to do just to get it done and over with. And she's like, I'm a mom, I understand. And she's like, that's not really how I like to work, and I would rather have you do it naturally, but basically you've been at it for a while, and given your circumstances, I think it's best to do a C-section. And so within 20 minutes, they had the OR room ready for me. I met the anesthesiologist, and she tells me, she's like, if you feel anything or anything, you need to be vocal about it. I had to sign a piece of paper saying that if anything goes wrong, I had to sign a piece of paper saying that there is a chance that they might accidentally, hit a different part of my organ or cut into it or something like that. And so I signed it, which is kind of crazy. Okay. So we end up, and all of a sudden I'm feeling nauseous. And I tell her, I'm like, I'm feeling nauseous. I feel like I want to puke. and they have started like going inside cutting me basically. So they're doing the thing, they're like, oh, by the way, you know, you're gonna feel some pulling, some tugging, well, you know, which is normal. Like at this point I was in so much pain. Well, before the epidural I was in pain that I was like, this is nothing. So I feel the pulling and tugging, and all of a sudden I'm feeling more and more pain. I tell her, I was like, it hurts a lot. And so all of a sudden, this is by Vlad's words, he said that she started to administer a whole bunch of like medications and stuff like that so that I can like help with pain. Which, by the way, we got her statement and I looked into what she administered, and she literally had like 15 different items that she like put inside of me through the epidural line. I remember like at one point like I was just falling asleep, and she told me that if no drug is like working, then that she's gonna administer like a sleeping thing. I remember I was kind of zoning in, zoning out, zoning in, zoning out, and I think they took her out quite fast. She did cry, which is special. They showed me through the little window thing, and then they put her on my chest, and I cried. And it's just weird when you're not, I couldn't hold her and stuff, and then I remember I pass out. And in the midst of it, this is from Vlad's words, Vlad cut the umbilical cord, which took like 3 or 4 times. He cut the umbilical cord, and I was just so sad that I didn't get to see it happen, just because that wasn't something that he really wanted to do, but he ended up doing. What about her, the fact that she went to the bathroom, and they said, well, the guy was ready to suck stuff out of her lungs, and she had a little bit, but nothing that was too concerning, which is like, praise God. So she didn't end up in NICU. And I get rolled back, and I guess then it's recovery. You know, when people say C-section is like an easy way out, I don't think people realize how hard it is. I felt completely devastated knowing that I couldn't be as much as a help, and like moving around was painful, and I was so swollen, and I couldn't move my legs, and you know, just like even after the surgery, like being home and just like having to like get out of bed and like pick her up and like feed her, it was like extremely painful. And but somehow like we did it. Somehow she's here, praise God. She's healthy, she's fussy, but we're getting used to having her around in our life, and we're so thankful for her. I think next time I'm not gonna do a birth plan because it's a joke, and things don't really go to plan. Oh, by the way, the reason why she couldn't come out was because her forehead wasn't like straight down, and she was a little bit tilted up, so she was budging into my pelvic, and she couldn't come out, which is probably why my contraction, well, that's probably why I wasn't dilating, and that's something we talked about with the OB and stuff, and she said that's probably why. Anyway, so that's my story. I'm sad that I had to get a C-section, but it had to be done, and now it's time to recover. Anyway, I hope you have a great day, and I will see you or talk to you whenever I have the chance and I looked a little more put together. All right, bye.